Hey, hi everyone. Welcome back to my channel Imtiaz IT Service. This is the second session for developing the Hibernate application. Because in the last session, we just understood, first session, we have understood about architecture. In the second session, we understood here how we can develop your Hibernate application and how we can create a project with the help of Maven. Fine. So the people who has not watched that video, please, I request for them to go and watch that video and come back so that you can understand here. So I have already uploaded, guys, hybrid architecture session as well as hybrid application. So please watch this video then. Fine. Okay. So without wasting much time, let's begin now. So basically, as I said earlier also for you, if you want to develop the hybrid application, which is used to communicate with any sort of database server, as of now, we are using MySQL database server. Okay. Any database server. So basically, we can need here three things. First thing is we require the hybrid configuration file. Second thing is we required the Pojo classes. And third thing, we required Hibernate mapping files. Okay. So basically in the Hibernate configuration file, we are basically configure the information. What information? We'll see all the things practically there. And what exactly the Pojo class, it means, what it contains, that all the thing also we'll try to understand. And third thing is what? Hibernate mapping file. We also try to understand here what exactly it is. Fine. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's go back to the Eclipse and start doing the coding part here. Okay, so in the last session, we have already created the project, the sample project we have created, guys, right? So as I told you that whenever you create the Maven project with archetype, so it will create the structure for you and basically given for you the src mean Java package as well as one class also he has given, right? And it also includes the resources, test files, and dependencies, because in the last session, I've shown you how to add the dependencies, what will happen. Okay. And then if you want to add all the dependencies, we require the pom.xml file. So in the last class, all the things we have seen in details, right? So please, if you're not watched that video, go and watch and come back there. Fine. Great. So let's do one thing. Before starting here, you need to ensure that your database is ready, right? So I was using MySQL database, guys. So I have already created in the last class the database whose database name is myheap. So in the database, as I told you that we can create the tables, views, procedures, and the functions. We have already created the database whose database myheap. So I'm going to use this database, guys. So the database is ready with you. Okay. Okay. Move on to the next one. For developing the application, hybrid application, which is used to communicate with the database, we required three things. The first thing is Hibernate configuration file. Let's talk about that. See, basically, Hibernate configuration file, that is cfg.xml file, which contain here the following information. What it contain, guys? Now it contain the list of information. First one is it contain here URL. Or first thing I'll give here driver class, URL, username, password, and delete class. Okay, na? Along with that, it also include the mapping information also, that is HBM file information. We'll discuss that one here. So basically here, the point here is whenever you work with Hibernate here. So first thing is we need to create the Hibernate configuration file, right? So Hibernate configuration file basically contain my driver class. It contain driver class, URL, username, password, dialect, and HBM. So these are the information basically it contains here. Okay. Now let's see that what is the behavior of Hibernate application if there is no Hibernate configuration file is defined in the project there. Okay. Let's go back to the test class. Let's do one thing. Let's create the step one. Create the configuration object. So basically the configuration is a class actually. Okay. This is the class which making easier to bootstrap an instance of a Hibernate. So that means basically the behavior is whenever we create the configuration object, it create the empty configuration object. And in this configuration class, guys, we had a method whose method name is configure. So whenever we call the configure method here, it always look for the Hibernate configuration file. Okay. The first thing is I'm creating the configuration object. An empty configuration object is created. Okay. An empty configuration object is created here. Now, step two, what I'm going to do, guys, invoke the configure method here. Now, what happens, guys, configure method here? So whenever we call the configure method, it always look for default hibernate.cfg.xml file. If this file is not available, throw the exception. Let's see that are we correct or wrong, guys. Okay. So I'm just calling the configure method here. So whenever we call the configure, guys, it always look for hibernate.cfg.xml file. Let's see that whether it's there or not there in the class path. Yes, it's not there. If it is not there, guys, it is throwing some configuration exception. What exception? Configuration exception here. You can see, guys, could not locate resource hibernate.cfg.xml file. So from this point, we have understood that whenever we create the configuration object, is creating an empty object, and whenever we call the configure method, he always look for it. Always look for it. Always look for what, ma? It always look for the configure file. If this configure file is not there, throw the exception here. Okay. So from this point, I have understood that. Make sure that I have to create the configuration file here. Let's create the configuration file. That is hibernate.cfg.xml. Now you can ask me the question also, sir, is it only the hibernate.cfg or we can also create our own names? We can also create our own names. For that, we need to use other overloaded method. Okay, we'll see that later. So first thing is I'm making the declaration of XML. Okay, see, basically as of now, if you just look at here, I have not done any configuration inside this configuration file. Okay, I've just kept empty here. I just declare the XML only. Okay, XML declaration, fine. So now let's see that what's the behavior now. If you just look at here, whenever we call the configure method, it look for the configuration file. Yes, it is available. But in this configuration file, whether we have configured any sort of thing, guys, no. So now let's see that what will happen now. In this case, what will happen? We'll throw some exception here. So what exception is getting this time? We're getting Hibernate exception here. That is accessing stack stream or parser error we are getting here. What it means actually. See, basically what happens like as of now, we have the configuration file, but this is a XML file which is a invalid. So basically here, we have a parser is one of the program which is used to check whether the XML is valid or not. If it is not valid, it throw the error. Now, basically, why it's not valid? Because we have not defined any element or the tag that is a root tag. Okay. So generally what happens like if you want to write any information inside this XML, we're supposed to follow the DTT rules, which is given by the Hibernate itself and which is defined inside the Hibernate core. Inside one package, there is a DTT. You can see, guys, now. Can you find the DTTs, guys? Yes, there is a DTTs. Where is defined, guys, now? Inside the Maven dependency, you can find the jar file that is hibernate-core. Inside that, you can find a package org.hibernate. Now you can just look at, guys, carefully. There is a DTT here. Okay, that is document type definition. So according to this rules, we can write the XML. And to check whether the XML is valid or not, we need the parsers. And this parsers program is already integrated in the Hibernate. That's the reason they're checking, which is invalid here. Okay, I hope you understood. Okay, great. So now let's learn how to write the XML file. We can write the XML file. First thing is we need to define the location where exactly these elements are defined. Now you can see control space. Okay, just wait. Okay, now can you see, guys, now? So yes, defined one element here that is Hibernate hyphen configuration. This is a base or we can say root element of your Hibernate configuration file. So inside this Hibernate configuration file, if you see that how to write it, see basic simple answer. You go back to the DTD, you can find the elements. and we have the root element here, Hibernate configuration. Inside that, we have the child elements like a session factory. You can see session factory and the security. So section factory and the Hibernate configuration, there is no special tags is defined, so it is a mandatory for the define. So here we can define it, guys. Now just write Hibernate configuration. Inside that, control space session factory. Now here inside that session factory, just go and verify. Okay, I'll just keep here, guys. Now okay, now if you just look at I'll just remove. Yeah, so go for session factory. We have the property tag, mapping tag. Inside that we can define the class, collections, event, and listeners here. Okay, na? So you see that session factory, under that we have the child tag. So here we can configure the driver class, URL, username, password, dialect class, and mapping effect. All this we can configure. How we can configure, guys? We can use a tag called as property. So here you can specify the names. So what are the names actually we need to specify? These are very important here. So if you just look at carefully here, I have given here the names for you, right? What are the names he has given for you? First one, driver class. What is the driver class, guys? Now here, what is the driver class we are using? We are using MySQL, right? So if you're using the MySQL here, so what is the MySQL? Go to the package. So don't buy at anything. Everything is given. MySQL, and here we can find JDBC, and here we can find a driver class. Yes. So you can specify here name. So what is the name we can define, guys? Now connection driver underscore class here, and here we can specify the class name, that is com.mysql.cg.jdbc. Okay, we have a driver class. Okay, so this is my class here. Similarly, we can define the property, that is URL jdbc column mysql column localhost port number 3306 and database mykeep, right? Next one, we have a property username root. We have a property password as a root, and also we have a property what's that property, guys? Now delete class, right? Delete class. What is the delete class here now? So look for the delete class also, which is given for that, for the JDBC. Go for Hibernate, go for dialect package, org.hibernate.dialect, org.hibernate.dialect class dot. So we are connecting with MySQL. For each and every classes he has given here. So we have MySQL. Where is the MySQL, guys? Yeah, we have MySQL class. MySQL capital 8 dialect class. Okay? Right. So great. So these are the things we have been configured, guys. So apart from that, extra information. Okay. So extra information generally whenever you're connecting with the database. Okay? Now what that information, guys? So basically what happens, like generally whenever we create the configuration object, we know that basically it is creating the empty object, and whenever we call the configure method, it basically read all this information stored in the database. But next step is what happens, guys, whenever we read. Okay, so for example, third step, I'll tell you. Third step, get the session factory object. How we can get, guys? CFG dot build session factory object, which return session factory object here. Control Shift O. Now, generally, what happens, like whenever we call the build session factory, whenever you call build session factory object, it try to get the driver class URL, username, password, and then it will connect with the database. And this information, sorry, once again I'll help you. Whenever we call the build session factory, it will get all this information, pass this information to the internally connection pool program. So what is the point here? First, it will get driver class, URL, username, password, okay, and from the memory, and pass this information to the C3P0, that is internally connection pool, okay, and get the connection. What more? And get the connection from the database. Let's see, are we correct or wrong, guys? Are we correct or not? Okay, now? So let's say, for example, I was writing the wrong name. Let's say something I'm writing QQ. I'm writing wrong information. Whether we are correct or not, let's see that. Now, if you see that there is no class, okay, let's see, there is another error actually. Let's see, application JDBC connection, okay. Unable to create service JDBC environment, unable to resolve the name MySQL 8 dialect as a strategy. Okay, ठीक है. Let's use this normal wala. Let's see that what happens now. So dialect class is not getting, guys. So maybe it's not taking this one, maybe spelling mistake or something. Let's see that what happens. And we'll get the error, we'll find it. Okay, so let's see another error, unable to request. Okay, let's go and verify, guys. Maybe MySQL connector 8 cd.jdbc. Sorry, this is a dialect class problem. Go to the dialect class. Where is the dialect class, guys? Yeah, this is a dialect class here. Go for MySQL 8 and MySQL 8. Okay, and let's come here. org.hibernate. My spelling mistake, guys, actually. MySQL 8 dialect. Okay, let's see that are we correct or not. Okay, if not, I'll just copy that and paste it here. Let's see. Okay, now if you see that there is no problem with the dialect class, right? So dialect class is perfectly, but the problem is what? Application must supply JDBC connection. So it fails to get the connection, right? It fails to get the connection. So why it fails to get the connection, guys, now? What is the reason here? There's not a reason about dialect class now. The reason is about there is no database whose database name is what? QQQ, right? So we had a database whose database name is what, guys? My hip there, right? Okay, now let's see once again. Okay, still there is something problem. Let's see, let's figure out it. Hibernate dialect. Something does not need to specify. Okay. Something is problem, database Java init. Okay, let's see what's the problem. Hibernate CFG username. Okay, so there's a problem with connection dot username. That's my mistake here. Connection dot password here. Okay. Let's see, are we correct or wrong? If not, I will see that. And I think so connection dot URL also. Okay. Let's see, guys. Are we correct or wrong? Okay, so yes. Yes, perfectly is getting, guys, now. Okay, let me show you with the wrong database also. Maybe you will be not trusting, right? Let's say run Java application. Now, can you see, guys, now? Unknown database QQ here. So we're not getting any database here, right? So what is the database we have, guys, now? We have something called as my API. I hope you're understanding. So I forgot to add the implicit, that is connection, okay, prefix as a connection here. I forgot, right? Connection dot driver class, connection dot URL. connection.username, connection.password here. Okay, na? So perfectly guys now. Okay, now let me repeat once again. So whenever we call the build session factory, it will get the driver class URL username password from the memory and pass this information to the internal connection pool. Can you see guys now? Let me clear the screen and run this application once again. You can see guys now, there is a connection pool here now, whose size is 20 here, right? So internally, if you see that, it is connection property passing this information to a connection pool here. Okay, so we had a connection pool here internally, which is using. To that, it is passing here and getting the connection from the database here. I hope it's clear now for everyone. Okay, so now what happens like generally during this one, okay, during this one, what happens like explicitly still you want some more things here. Let's say, for example, you want to make sure that table should be also creating. Okay, so what you want guys now? You want to ensure that the tables also should be creating while during this one. So for that, you can configure here hbm2 ddl dot auto hbm2 ddl dot auto. So here you can specify the four information. So you can specify four information. So what are the four information you can specify? One is create. Second one is you can give update. Third one is create and drop. And fourth one is validate. Okay, now. So this four information you can pass, guys, in this one here. Now, what is the each one is contained, guys? Now, basically, you can ask me the question here, right? So please make sure that this is very important because if you just understood this one, then whole thing you'll understand here. So basically, for example, if you specify create, then assume that if you specify here create. Now, what the create will do here is it will check here whether the tables are available or not. If the tables are not available, okay, if the tables are not available, in this case, it is going to create the table. Okay, na? Are you following this now? So what happens now? Whenever you call here create, so generally if the tables are not available, then in this scenario, it will going to create one table here for you. Are you able to follow guys now? So that is a behavior. That is a behavior of create. That is a behavior of create here. I'll repeat once again. Whenever user create, if the tables are not available, it will get the table. If the tables are available, what happens now? Generally, if the tables are available, it will drop the tables and create the new tables. That's the behavior of create here. Next one is update. So whenever you specify the updates, it will check that tables are available or not. If the tables are not available, it will create it. Okay, if the tables are not available, it will create. If tables are already available, it will not create the table. That's the behavior of update. In case of create and drops, if the tables are not available, it will create the tables. But whenever we close the session factory, immediately is going to drop the table. That's the behavior of create and drop. Now, what is the behavior of validate, guys? Now, in case of validate, it will check whether the required tables are available or not. If the tables are not available, then it will throw the exception here. It will throw the exception. So that is the behavior of create, update, create, drop, and validate. I hope it's clear for everyone here. Okay. So now let me write updates enough for me. Next, what happens like if you want to see that really the tables are creating and the queries are generating or not, in this case, we can configure the property. We have a property called as show underscore SQL as a tool here. That's it, guys. Fine. This informations are required here. Okay. I hope it's clear up to here now. Right click, run as Java applications. Now, as of now, there is no Pojo classes. Now you cannot expect anything the tables are creating here because if the Pojo's class are defined here, then only is going to create the tables there. So I hope till here is everyone is clear now, right? I hope everyone is clear, guys. Okay, great. Let's move on to the next one. Let's do one thing. Let's go to the second part. Second part is create the Pojo classes. So I'm just creating one Pojo class, guys. Pojo means a simple class. A simple class. Let's say create one employee. A simple class which follows some rules. It has to be keep in the package. And you can specify some properties. I'm just specifying some properties. You can define one constructor also if you want, otherwise not required. Okay. We can define one setters and getters, which is optional for you. So simple project class here. Simple project class. I'm just defining the simple project class here. Now, why we're defining this project class is because generally here we need to configure actually. What we have to do, guys? We need to map this project class with the required table. So we had a table, right? We have to map with the table. You have to map with the table. I hope you're understanding, guys. We have to map with the table. You have to map with the table. So what is the table we are content here? We have the table called as employee. So basically we need to map here. What we have to map, guys, now? We have to map here the corresponding project class. Come on, guys. We have to map the corresponding project class with the corresponding table. Okay? So first thing is we have to map the corresponding table with the class, and we have to configure the required columns. We had a columns, let's say EID. I can give EID also, guys. EID, ename, salary. So now we have to map what, guys? We have to map the corresponding columns with the respective columns here. That means this properties, and we have to map the columns. So in short, I'll be making to understand. We have to map the corresponding class with the table, corresponding properties with the columns here. Because generally what happens, like whenever we store here, we store the data in the form of object. It has to map the corresponding tables so that it can generate the query and get the data from this object and send to the database here. So that is how it is going to map. Okay, now? So in order to map the class, that is a project class, as well as the table, we required the Hibernate configuration file, HBM file here. So you can say HBM file here. Okay, so let's create one file. So what file we can create here? Employee.hbm.xml. So make sure that the prefix name which you're writing, write the name of which the project class you have created. It's a good practice. Okay, so inside that, I'm going to configure here. If you want to configure, what we have to do, guys, now go for DTD rules, follow the DTD rules here. So in this case, we have to go for mapping here. So I'm just copying here HBM configuration file details. Now here we can configure. So what we can configure, guys, now? Okay, Hibernate mapping here. So here I'll just remove because it gets disturbance here. Okay, now if you just look at carefully now, inside that Hibernate mapping here, you can specify here all these child tags. All these are the child tags here. Okay, na? You can find here identifier, type, filter, import, class, subclass, joins, subjoin, result set, queries, filter, fetch, database. Okay, and each one is having different one, guys. Now each one is also having the different one. So for example, here when you're working with this one, maybe you can have the identifier as a generator name. Okay, these are the attributes, guys. Okay, these are the elements, these are the attributes here. Okay, na? And then you can also have the class. You can go for next one. Class will also have so many child tags here. Can you find it here? Okay, so all this we can use depends on the requirement. But exactly what we supposed to do, guys, now? We have to configure the information about the table and the project class, right? So for that, I'm going to use a child tag. What is a child tag? I'm going to use a class. Come on, guys. So what I'm going to use? I'm going to use a class here. So I'm going to use a class. So in this class, we have to configure the name of the class here. That is the attribute name. What's the name, guys? We have a class, absolute class name. So we can give with package name. Dot employee. And please cross check, man. Cross check. Yes, it's open. Correct. Perfectly now. Okay. Now class name as well as table name. You can also specify the table name if you want here. Let me create a table name also. Okay, na? Next one is what? This class is having ID. So ID we are just considering as a primary key here generally. For that, we need to consider here a tag called as ID. And for that ID, what's the name you are given, guys? ID. And what's the column name you need to specify? That depends on you. Column, you can specify EID. Let's say, for example, you want to specify EID. So let's write that. Okay, that's it, enough. Next one, here we have something called as generators. Generators is basically used for uniquely identify. Okay, so I'll be talking more in future class when I talk about generators separately. I'll take separate video for the generators. So there are different classes it has been defined, which is helping us to generate the IDs automatically here. So as of now, I'm using here identity here as of now, one of the generator. We have so many assigned, we have, okay, UID has. There are so many generators has been given here. So let's discuss the separate session for that. Okay, but for the timing here, I'm just giving a generator class as a identity here. Next one, what are the next property we have, guys? Now, what's the next property we have? Name and salary. So these are the properties. Let's take the property. And what's the name, guys? We have given name. And column name also you want to specify name. Okay. Next one, property. You have salary, and column name you want to specify is salary. Now, if you see that we are just mapping the class, project class, and the table. Okay, the property and the column, property, column, property, column. So this information we have to configure. Now we want to say to the Hibernate application, hey Hibernate application, whenever you're reading the Hibernate information, please read the mapping information also. You can mapping information also. How we can configure, guys? Simple. We have mapping type, and then you can specify here. So you can specify the class, you can specify the file, jar, packages, and the resources. Now, what exactly we require, guys? Now here we required the location. Yes or no? We require the location. So for the location, we require the resource, and whose resource name is employee.hbm.xml file. So let's see that are we correct or wrong, whether it's doing all the things for us or not. Let me show you. Okay, now if you just look it carefully look at, guys. Now first thing is what is doing here. Let me repeat once again now. Let me tell you what happens now. Whenever it's come to the build section factory, it take driver class URL username password from the JVM memory and pass this information to the internally connection pool, that is C3P0, and get the connection one by database. If you want, if you required, you are specifying the update. If you required, it is going to create the tables. Can you see, guys? Now it is creating the table. So how it is creating the table? How you know the table is created? Because he's having the information. So it will come here and read this information, and then it is going to create the tables for us. Now can see, guys, now it's creating the table with a column what you are given, EID, right? E-name, right? And e-salary, yes or not? And is also adding the primary key here for you because you are given the column as a EID there, right? So it is creating the table. Go and verify now. My hip, refresh the table. Yeah, perfectly, guys. Now you can see here the table is created or not? Yes, perfectly. The table is created. Now, so there is doing a lot of work or no? So this step is doing a lot of work. This step is also doing a lot of work for you. So it is not good practice to call these methods again and again because they are doing a lot of job internally for you. Okay, na? There are a lot of job is doing internally for you. I hope it's clear for everyone, guys, now up to here, right? Okay, next one. What we've required, guys, we need to perform the operation. When we want to perform the operations, what operations we perform, guys? Now, generally, we want to perform here to insert the record, to update the record, to retrieve the records here. So in order to perform these operations, we need to get the session object. How to get the session object? Let's go to the next step. Step 4. Get the session object. SF dot open session, we have a method which return session object for the Control Shift O, use Hibernate also. Now what happens, guys? Whenever you call the open session here, whenever we call open session here, okay, Hibernate will create the object. Okay, it will create one object internally, which is like a hash table, and we call as first level cache. So internally it is creating what ma here? It is creating one first level cache. This Hibernate, once is create the first level cache, this first level cache will be associated with the session object. So what happens, guys? Now in this case, it is creating the session object. It also creating the first level cache, and the first level cache is like a hash table, like a hash table, and this is associated with the session object here. I hope you're understanding, everyone. Okay, so it is creating a session object and also creating the first level cache. It is also creating the first level cache, and this first level cache is associated with the session object here. I hope perfect everyone is understood, right? Okay, now generally here, if you want to perform, generally I'm talking here, okay, whenever you want to perform any insert, update, delete, we need to get the transaction object here. So get the transaction object. How we can get the transaction object, guys? We can use begin transaction, which going to return transaction object here. Control Shift O, import it here. So why we are getting the transaction object? Because we want to perform insert, update, and delete operation here. Then you can create here, create the Pojo class object and set the data. So let's create an object, guys, employee. I'm hard coding as of now. In future class, you can remember that. You can call setter methods. You can call the setter methods. I'm just giving, say, 101. I will explain you all the things in details. Let's write here employee name Raju, set salary. Okay. So we have created object, guys. Now what happens now? We want to perform the operation. We want to perform the operation. So for performing the operations here, what we required? We required the methods, right? So what are the operations we want to take? It depends on you. Okay, you can decide it. What operations you want to perform here. So for doing that here, we can use a save method. We can use save method. You want to that one. You can use persist method. You can use save or update method. Okay, there are different methods are defined here. Okay, we'll see that what difference between them. We'll try to understand all the things. And the most important interview question is save and persist. This is very important. So with the help of session object, because all these methods define the session object, we can use a save. Now you can see, guys, we have the save, which return the object. Okay, we have the save or update, which doesn't return anything. We also have the persistent, which doesn't return anything here. So we are using what? Save method. We want to save the object here. Now, generally what happens like, whenever we call a save method, internally Hibernate take the object and add to the first level cache by using the key called as TBS. TBS means to be safe, like this, TBS. And this object, which object, guys? Now we have created an object, right? We have created object, right? What is the object we have created? Employee. And we have set the data also. What are the data we have set, guys? Now ID 101, name Raju, salary 30,000. What object it is actually? It is an employee object, right? This employee object is associated with what, guys? Is associated with this one, first level cache. I hope it's clear for everyone. Understood? Okay. Now, according to up to here is clear now. So whenever you call the save method, Okay, this employee object will be associated with the first level cache here. Okay, na? Understood now, right? So if you want to check that whether this object is available in the session object or not, we can use a method called as session dot contains. You can check it whether it's return true or false. You'll understand. Let's say, for example, I'm just running the application here. Can you see getting true? So true means what? True means what, guys? The session object, and already is creating the query also. It's not sent to the database. It will not send that to the database until we send the we send the transaction there. Okay, you can cross check it. Maybe I was wrong. Go and verify. Let's say run the application. See whether the data is saved. No. Why? Because we have not end the transaction there. So until we end that or commit it here, it will not send it here. So what we have to do, guys, now basically next step is eighth step. Okay, end the transaction here. How we can end the transaction, guys? Now ts dot we can use commit method. Okay, na? So whenever we call the commit method here, whenever we call the commit method, it will go to the first level cache. It will go to the first level cache and get the query, and it will get the query. Which query? Insert query, and pass this data to that query and add to the object. There is an object here that is called as batch object. You may be learning the JDBC, and that batch object will be sent to the database server. Okay, na? It will send to the database server. Now you can see, guys, now it will send to the database server. Go and verify. Yes, it is sent or not. Can you see, guys? It is already sent here, right? I hope you're understanding here, because it's not taking here because it is generating automatically, because we are using what in the HBM we have used what identity, so it is generating automatically. So we have sent to twice, so it is generating automatically here sequences. Okay, na? Okay, fine. So finally the data has been sent here, and last thing what we can do, guys, now last thing, step 9, close the session object. So session dot close, and here close the session factory object, sf dot close here. That's it, guys. I hope it's clear now. Understood? Let's do one thing. Let's Sunil give 60,000. When verifying the database, right? Yeah, successfully store, guys, now 2 data here. So I hope it's clear for everyone how exactly it is working now. Fine. So I request for you to pause this video, go back and watch again so that you can understand each and every step here. Okay, now? So that's it for today. Thank you so much, because it became lengthy video. So if you just understood this one, please like and subscribe and share it to everyone, guys. Thank you so much.